where the alphas are lethal and the humans are unimpressed. Quick question for the pack before we dive into today's chaos. Where are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments, and drop a wolf emoji if you think a boulder-shattering tantrum is a perfectly reasonable response to being called a softie. Today, we have a wild one. It's funny, it's intense, and it involves a very sassy office designer and a very bare-chested alpha who's about to lose his iron control. But before we start, if you want to support the channel and get early access to exclusive stories and bonus chapters, hit that join button down below. It helps us keep the safe house secure and the stories coming. Now, take a deep breath. The rock is crushed, but the alpha is just getting started. Let's read. Chapter 1. Daniella slammed the heel of her boot into the side of her cobalt blue sedan. Mud splattered across her jeans, coating the denim in a thick brown sludge. The front left tire sat buried in a sinkhole disguised as a puddle. Rain drummed against the roof of the car, adding a harsh rhythm to the quiet, dark woods. She crossed her arms and glared at the tree line. Perfect, just perfect. A guttural snarl shattered the silence. Daniella froze. That sound lacked the grunt of a bear or the cry of a coyote. That sound held pure, lethal intent. She clicked off her headlights and stepped toward the trees, peering through the rain. In the clearing ahead, shadows clashed. Men, giant men, and wolves? No, not just wolves. Beasts the size of compact cars tore at each other, fur ripped, blood sprayed against the tree trunks. The sheer violence of the scene forced the breath from her lungs. In the center of the chaos stood a man. He moved with brutal precision, spinning a thick wooden staff. The ends of the wood gleamed with wicked silver tips. He gripped the bare wood, his knuckles white, twisting the weapon to avoid letting the silver graze his own skin. He drove the metal point into the chest of a lunging beast. The creature shrieked, a sound that made Daniella's teeth ache, and collapsed into the mud. The man did not pause. He pivoted, sweeping the staff to crush the jaw of a second attacker. Daniella stood in the rain, watching the slaughter. She refused to scream. She looked down at her ruined boots, then back at the man standing amidst the carnage. He wiped a streak of blood from his jaw. He turned his head, his gaze locking onto her. His eyes glowed a faint, unnatural gold in the dark. "Are you done?" Daniella called out, raising her voice over the storm. The man stiffened. He stared at her, chest heaving. "Because my car is stuck in the mud," she continued, pointing a thumb over her shoulder. "And unless one of those oversized dogs has a winch in its back pocket, I need a tow truck." Why am I talking to the man who just killed monsters? She wondered. Shock makes me stupid. He stepped over a fallen body, his grip tightening on the staff. "You should not be here." "And you shouldn't hold a stick like a ninja in the middle of a public road, but here we are." He closed the distance between them. Up close, he towered over her. Rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead. He radiated heat, cutting through the chill of the storm. "Turn around and run," he commanded. Daniella snorted. "Run where? My car is a permanent lawn ornament right now, and my cell has zero signal out here. Do you have a phone?" He stared at her, his golden eyes narrowing. "You do not understand what you just saw." "I saw a guy in need of anger management fighting the cast of a horror movie. Do I get to make a phone call, or do we just stand here in the rain?" A rustle in the bushes behind them drew his attention. His posture rigid, he leveled the silver-tipped staff toward the sound. "More are coming." "More dogs?" Daniella asked, wiping rain from her eyes. "Rogues," he corrected, his voice a low rumble. "And they will tear you apart." "I taste terrible," she offered. He did not smile. He shoved the staff into his left hand, reached out with his right, and grabbed her waist. "Hey!" Chapter 2. He did not ask for permission. He bent down, driving his shoulder into her stomach, and stood up, lifting her off the ground like a sack of flour. Daniella gasped as the wind left her lungs. "Put me down!" "Quiet," he ordered, marching toward the deeper woods. "You are kidnapping me," she stated, her voice bouncing with his strides. "And you are doing a terrible job of it. Your shoulder is digging into my ribs. Adjust your grip." He paused, his chest vibrating with a growl. "You just watched me slaughter 3 rogues, human. Have some self-preservation." "I watched you hit stray dogs with a stick. Now put me down before I throw up on your back." He tightened his hold. He carried his staff, ensuring the silver tips faced away from both of them. "You are a liability. You saw too much." "I saw a guy in need of a bath." Daniella pounded her fist against his back. It felt like punching a brick wall. He is built like a tank. A very warm, very annoying tank. "Stop hitting me," he demanded. "Stop stealing me." They reached a hidden dirt road. A sleek, midnight violet SUV sat idling under the canopy of trees. He opened the back door, tossed his staff onto the floorboards, and dumped Daniella onto the leather seats. She scrambled upright, glaring at him as he snatched her useless cell phone from her back pocket. Mud coated her jeans, ruining the pristine interior. She smiled a little at the mess. "Do not move," he ordered, shutting the door. He climbed into the driver's seat and locked the doors. "This is a kidnapping. You stole my phone, so I want my legally mandated phone call." "You get nothing. Sit in silence." "Silence is boring. What is your name? I need to know what to tell the police when I report the giant man who ruined my favorite boots." "Alexander," he snapped, shifting the SUV into gear. The vehicle roared to life. "My pack calls me Alax." "Alax? Sounds like a brand of bleach. Suits your grumpy vibe." Alax gripped the steering wheel. "You talk too much." "You talk too little. We balance each other out. Where are we going?" "A secure location." "Is there food at this secure location? Fighting giant dogs makes a girl hungry." Alax looked at her through the rearview mirror. His golden eyes reflected the dashboard lights. "You have no fear." "I have plenty of fear, Alax. I just prefer to mask it with sarcasm. It keeps the wrinkles away." Chapter 3. They drove for an hour. The SUV pulled up to a structure hidden deep in the mountains. Cabin was an understatement. It was a modern fortress of stone and glass. "This place is obscenely expensive," Daniella said, taking in the towering architecture. "Crime pays well." Alax unlocked the doors. "Get out." Daniella stepped into the rain and marched to the front door. Inside, the place screamed exorbitant luxury. Clean lines, dark wood, and a gas fireplace dominated the living room. The flames danced steadily over ceramic logs. Alax stood in the center of the room, water dripping from his clothes. "Rules." "I hate rules," Daniella interrupted. "Rule 1. You stay in the guest room unless I permit you to leave." "I get a guest room? 5-star kidnapping." "Rule 2. You do not touch the perimeter security systems on the windows." "Is it an electric shock? Will I fry?" "Rule 3. When I tell you to be quiet, you shut your mouth." Daniella walked past him, running a finger along a polished mahogany table, leaving a smudge of mud. "I have a rule, Alax. I talk when I want. You want silence? Buy a goldfish." Alax stepped in front of her, his height towering over her. The scent of rain and crushed mint rolled off him. "You do not understand the danger you are in," he warned, his voice a low rumble. "I understand you have boundary issues." He smells too good for a murderer, she thought, shifting her weight. "You will obey me." "I will annoy you until you let me go." He glared. She smiled. The tension in the room thickened, a tangible current pulling between them. "Mud," Alax noted, looking down at her boots. "You are tracking mud everywhere." "Consider it modern art. Adds character to the billionaire aesthetic." "Take off the boots." "Take me home." They stared at each other. Neither blinked. Finally, Alax let out a sharp breath, the sound frustrated and exhausted. "Sit in the chair. Do not move." "Are you going to fetch me a towel? Good boy." Alax turned back, his eyes flashing gold. Push me again, human, and see what happens. I just did. Nothing happened. I give your threats a 2 out of 10. Chapter 4. Alax pointed to a leather chair. Sit. Daniella sat, crossing one muddy leg over the other. She made sure the wet denim brushed against the expensive leather armrest. Alax pulled up a chair opposite her. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Name. Daniella. Last name? None of your business. He let out a sharp breath. I need to know who you are, Daniella. I need to know who you work for. I work for a firm that designs office spaces. I promise we are not plotting to overthrow your weird forest cult. Those beasts you saw, you know what they are. Big dogs. Very big, very ugly dogs. Daniella kept her face blank, but her heart drummed a frantic, wild rhythm against her ribs. She knew what she saw. Men turning into beasts. It defied every law of nature, but her brain had processed the impossible shapes, the cracking bones. Werewolves. He is a werewolf. The thought terrified her, yet a spark of wild fascination burned beneath the fear. They are rogues, Alax explained, watching her reactions. Packless. Dangerous. They would have torn you apart. You seem pretty dangerous yourself, Alax. I mean, you spin a stick like a majorette. Very intimidating. His jaw clenched. You mock everything. Humor is my defense mechanism. You should try it. You look like you need a massage and a vacation. He stood up, pacing the room. I will run your name. I will check your background. If you are tied to the rogues, I will find out. Check away. You will find parking tickets and a subscription to a baking magazine. Daniella watched him pace. He moved with a predatory grace. Despite the fear thrumming in her veins, she found herself tracing the lines of his broad shoulders under his wet shirt. You are staying here until I deem it safe, Alax ordered. And then? Then I erase your memory and drop you back in the city. Good luck finding my brain cells. I drank a lot of coffee today. Alax stopped pacing. He leaned down, placing his hands on the armrest of her chair, trapping her. His face was inches from hers. You are the most infuriating human I have ever met. Daniella did not lean back. She met his gaze head-on. And you are the bossiest kidnapper. Bring me a snack while you run my background check. Chapter 5. Alexander snapped the aluminum laptop shut on the mahogany table. The screen turned black, cutting off the glow against his face. He rubbed the back of his neck and let out a harsh breath. Clean, he stated. His voice carried a rough edge, exhausted from the adrenaline crash of the fight. No criminal record. No ties to the Iron Ridge Rogues. You design office spaces and have 2 unpaid parking tickets. You hold 0 tactical value to my enemies. Daniella leaned back in the leather chair. The mud on her jeans had dried into a stiff crust. She picked at a flake of dirt, flicking it onto the pristine rug. Told you, she said, crossing her arms. I am a law-abiding citizen, except for street-sweeping days. Now, can we address the giant furry elephant in the room? Alexander narrowed his golden eyes. He stood tall, towering over the furniture. There is no elephant. Right, just wolves. Huge, terrifying wolves that snap bones and tear throats. Daniella dropped the careless act. The adrenaline masking her shock began to crack, leaving behind a frantic, clawing need for answers. She sat forward, gripping the armrest until her knuckles turned white. You turn into a wolf, an actual, literal beast. You cracked a monster's jaw with a stick. Werewolf, he corrected, his tone flat. Oh, excuse me, werewolf. Because the distinction matters when a monster the size of a minivan tries to eat my car. She waved a hand in the air, her voice rising in pitch. How does that even work? Do you keep your clothes? Does it hurt? Where does the extra mass come from? Alexander pinched the bridge of his nose. Stop talking. No, I need to know the logistics. When you shrink back down, do you just stand there naked in the woods? Because that sounds like a terrible way to catch a cold. We run hot. We do not catch colds. And we retain our clothing if we choose to strip before a shift. Fascinating. Daniella tilted her head. He looks exhausted. Good. Kidnapping should be hard work. What about fleas? Is there a special luxury shampoo for that? Or do you guys just use a giant flea collar? Alexander took a step toward her. His sheer size cast a shadow over her chair, blocking the light from the hallway. You test my patience, human. I brought you here to keep you alive, not to host a biology seminar. I am a captive audience. Entertaining me is part of the hostage deal. Daniella stood up. She hated craning her neck to look at him. Even standing, the top of her head barely reached his collarbone. She refused to back down, tilting her chin up. You killed 3 of them, out there in the mud. You did not even flinch. They wanted my territory. They found you instead. Alexander leaned closer, his voice dropping into a lethal low register. If I had not intervened, you would be a pile of bones on the asphalt. They do not leave witnesses. The blunt truth knocked the earth out from under her. Daniella swallowed hard, fighting the sudden tremor in her hands. The reality of the violence she witnessed crashed over her. She shoved her hands into her pockets to hide the shaking. Are there more of them out there? She asked. Always. And they know what my car looks like. They know your scent. They know your face. Alexander watched her, tracking the rapid rise and fall of her chest. They know you belong to me now. I do not belong to anyone. In their eyes, you are my possession, my weakness. Daniella scoffed, fighting past the fear creeping up her spine. I am a terrible weakness. I complain too much. Fine, thank you for the rescue. Now, point me to a shower and order us a pizza. I have a lot more questions, and I refuse to interrogate you while smelling like a swamp. Alexander stared at her. His jaw muscle ticked. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, debating whether to jump or throw her off it. You demand food from the man holding you against your will? You owe me dinner. You ruined my boots. Daniella gestured to her ruined footwear. And no anchovies on the pizza. If you are going to hold me hostage, you will respect my dietary preferences. Chapter 6. A sharp chime echoed through the fortress. Alexander's head snapped toward the front door. He marched to a wall panel near the entryway and punched in a sequence of numbers. A screen flickered to life, showing the front porch. A young man with messy blonde hair and a bright smile stood outside, balancing 2 large paper grocery bags in his arms. Alexander hit a button. The heavy locks clicked open. The blonde man strolled inside, kicking the door shut behind him with the heel of his boot. Alpha! I brought the supplies. I grabbed the raw steaks you wanted, water, and... He stopped dead in his tracks. The man dropped the grocery bags onto the hardwood floor. Apples rolled across the floorboards. A box of sugary, neon-colored cereal spilled out. He sniffed the air, his nose wrinkling as he tilted his head back. His gaze locked onto Daniella sitting in the leather chair. Wild honeysuckle and sweet orange, the blonde man muttered. His eyes widened to the size of saucers. Human? You brought a human here? Leo, Alexander warned, his tone dropping an octave to a dangerous rumble. Leo ignored his alpha. He stepped closer to Daniella, his eyes bright with unfiltered curiosity. He looked at her muddy clothes, her messy hair, and her ruined boots. Hi, I am Leo. I am the beta of the pack. Are you okay? Did he growl at you? He growls a lot. We think it is acid reflux, but he refuses to see a doctor. Daniella burst into a laugh, the sound breaking the thick tension in the room. I like you, Leo. I am Daniella. And yes, he does a lot of growling. It gets repetitive fast. Leo, kitchen, now, Alexander commanded. He grabbed the back of Leo's jacket and hauled the younger man into the kitchen. Daniella stayed in the living room, but the open floor plan allowed her to hear every single word exchanged over the marble counters. Have you lost your mind? Leo whispered, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. You kidnapped a girl? And left her in muddy clothes? Alpha, this is bad form. You are supposed to court human women. Give them shiny things. Compliment their delicate features. She is a liability, Alexander hissed, his voice tight with rage. She saw the Iron Ridge rogues tear into each other. I am keeping her here until the threat is neutralized. You locked her in a chair, Leo argued, slapping a hand against the counter. Look at her. She is probably terrified out of her mind. She asked me about flea collars, Leo. That is a cry for help. Listen to me. Human women need romance to feel safe. Offer her a blanket. Tell her her hair looks like spun gold. Her hair is caked in mud. Then tell her the mud highlights her eyes. Do you want her to hate you? Be charming. Be a gentleman. I brought the neon cereal because I read humans love processed sugar. Feed her the sugar loops. Daniella leaned against the doorframe of the kitchen, crossing her arms over her chest. I can hear both of you. And Leo, you are terrible at whispering. But I do agree with the blanket idea, and I will take a bowl of the neon sugar loops. Alexander shot a withering glare at his beta. He looked ready to throw the younger man through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He grabbed a black duffel bag off a stool and shoved it hard into Leo's chest. Take the perimeter, Alexander ordered. Search the eastern border. If you see Iron Ridge scouts, report back. Do not engage. Do not speak to her again. Leo saluted, a bright grin spreading across his face. He shot Daniella a wink before jogging out the back door, leaving the bags of groceries abandoned on the floor. Alexander rubbed his temples, letting out a long, slow breath. He looked at Daniella, his expression a mix of sheer frustration and resignation. Shower. Down the hall. First door on the left. I will find you clean clothes. Make sure they compliment my eyes, Daniella teased, turning on her heel and heading down the hall. Chapter 7. Daniella stepped out of the bathroom, a cloud of steam following her into the hall. The hot water had washed away the mud and the chill from the rain, but it could not wash away the reality of her situation. She wore an oversized black t-shirt and a pair of gray sweatpants Alexander had left folded outside the door. She had to roll the waistband 3 times to keep the fabric from sliding off her hips. She walked back into the living room. Alexander stood by the windows, staring out into the pitch-black forest. He had changed into dry clothes, a dark gray Henley and black jeans. The gas fireplace cast flickering shadows across the sharp angles of his face. He turned when he heard her bare feet against the wood. Sit. Daniella did not argue this time. The exhaustion was finally catching up to her. She sat on the edge of the leather sofa, pulling her knees up to her chest. You need to know the stakes, Alexander began, pacing the length of the room. He moved with the restless energy of a caged predator. The beasts you saw are from the Iron Ridge pack. They are violent, unpredictable, and they want this territory. Why? Daniella asked, resting her chin on her knees. Resources. Isolation. This forest is a sanctuary for my people. We live in peace here, away from human cities. The Iron Ridge Alpha wants to turn this land into a hunting ground. He does not care about human casualties. If they take this border, every human in the surrounding towns becomes prey. The sheer weight of his words settled over the room, suffocating the last traces of her sarcasm. Daniella stared at him. Beneath the bossy, arrogant exterior, she saw the massive burden he carried. He was not just a fighter, he was a protector, standing between a quiet town and a bloodbath. And you stop them, she stated. It was not a question. I kill them, he corrected, his voice devoid of emotion. I protect my pack. I protect the borders. When you drove down that road tonight, you breached the perimeter during an active skirmish. They tracked your vehicle. So, they know I saw them. They caught your scent. They know a human witnessed the fight. To them, you are a loose end that can expose their existence to the human authorities. If I let you go back to your apartment, they will hunt you down within a day. Daniella gripped the fabric of the oversized sweatpants. The terrifying reality set in, cold and sharp. I cannot go home. Alexander stopped pacing. He stood in front of her, his towering frame shielding her from the view of the dark windows. Not yet. You remain here. This fortress is impenetrable. You are safe under my watch. And what happens if they find this place? What happens if they send 20 of those monsters to the front door? Alexander's eyes flashed gold, a brilliant, terrifying light in the dim room. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees, charged with a sudden, raw, crackling power. "Let them try," he rumbled, his voice vibrating with lethal promise. "I will rip them to shreds before they touch a single hair on your head. You have my word." The promise hit her with visceral force. Daniella looked up at him, her pulse skyrocketing. It was not fear this time. It was a chaotic, undeniable pull toward the sheer, overwhelming strength of the man standing over her. "Okay," she whispered. "I stay." Chapter 8. Midnight. The fortress sat in suffocating silence. Daniella lay in the massive bed inside the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. Her mind spun with images of massive wolves, glowing golden eyes, and the sheer heat radiating off her captor. She threw off the heavy duvet, her bare feet hitting the floorboards. Her throat felt like dry paper. She needed water. Alexander had given her one strict rule before bed: do not leave the room. Daniella grabbed the brass door handle and turned it. The mechanism clicked open with ease. He didn't lock it. Rookie mistake. She padded down the dark hallway, careful to avoid the squeaking floorboards. The hardwood felt cool against her skin. She reached the kitchen, guided by the moonlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She found a glass in the cabinet, turned the tap, and filled it to the brim. "You lack basic listening skills." Daniella jumped, splashing water over the rim of the glass and onto her hand. Alexander sat in an armchair in the corner of the living room, shrouded in darkness. He stood up, stalking into the kitchen. He wore only a pair of black sweatpants. The moonlight hit his bare chest, highlighting a landscape of old, jagged scars cutting across his ribs and shoulders. Daniella forced her eyes up to his face, refusing to let him catch her staring at his chest. "I was thirsty. Is hydration against pack law?" He moved fast, trapping her against the marble counter. He placed one large hand on either side of her hips, caging her in. The heat radiating off his skin sent a shiver down her spine. The scent of rain and crushed mint wrapped around her, intoxicating and thick. "The rule was simple," he murmured, his voice a dangerous low rasp. "Stay in the room." "I told you, Alexander. I hate rules." Daniella refused to shrink back against the counter. She lifted her chin, meeting his stare head-on. "You provoke me on purpose." "You make it too easy." He leaned closer. His face hovered mere inches from hers. She felt the warmth of his breath against her cheek. The space between them crackled with electric tension. The air grew thick, hot, and heavy. "You do not understand the instincts you are pushing," he warned, his golden eyes burning into hers. "I am not a human man. When you defy me in my own territory, every instinct in my blood tells me to conquer you, to prove my dominance and force you to submit." Daniella's heart hammered against her ribs. The threat should have sent her running back to the guest room. Instead, a reckless, defiant fire ignited in her veins. She liked the danger. She liked the way his control slipped when she pushed him. "Then you have a problem," she challenged, her voice dropping to a breathless whisper. "Because I do not submit to anyone. You want blind obedience? Go adopt a dog. I am staying right here." Alexander let out a ragged groan. He dropped his head, his forehead coming to rest against hers. His fingers curled around the edge of the marble counter, his knuckles turning white as he fought a brutal internal war against his own nature. He was losing his mind over a human, and they both knew it. Chapter 9. Morning sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors of the safe house, banishing the shadows of the previous night. Daniella stood in the center of the kitchen, staring at the marble counters. Someone had cleaned up the spilled groceries. A box of the neon sugar loops Leo brought sat next to a stack of ceramic bowls. Daniella grabbed a bowl, poured a mountain of the bright artificial rings, and drowned them in milk. She grabbed a stainless steel spoon and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The storm had passed. The surrounding forest stood green and vibrant, drops of water clinging to the pine needles. She took a bite of the cereal. The sugar rush hit her system, waking up her exhausted brain. A movement near the tree line caught her eye. Alexander stood at the edge of the manicured lawn. He wore the same black sweatpants from the night before, his chest bare. The morning light highlighted the jagged scars stretching across his ribs. He stood rigid, his head tilted, listening to something Daniella could not hear. She expected him to shift into a massive beast or pull out his silver-tipped staff to fight off a rogue scout. Instead, he dropped to one knee in the wet grass. Daniella stepped closer to the glass, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Alexander reached his large, lethal hands into a thick tangle of thorny blackberry bushes. His brow furrowed in concentration. He did not rip the branches apart. He moved his fingers with surgical precision, navigating the sharp thorns. A moment later, he pulled his hands free. Cupped in his palms sat a tiny, panicked blue jay. Its wing looked caught at an awkward angle, wrapped in a stray piece of nylon netting blown in from the storm. The terrifying alpha of the pack, the man who slaughtered 3 giant monsters without breaking a sweat, lowered his head. He spoke to the bird. Daniella could not hear the words through the thick glass, but she saw the tension leave his shoulders. He spent 5 solid minutes untangling the netting, his movements deliberate and focused. Once the bird was free, he opened his hands. The blue jay hopped onto his thumb, chirped once, and took flight into the canopy. Alexander watched it go, a faint, almost invisible smile touching the corner of his mouth. Daniella swallowed her bite of cereal. The big bad wolf is a Disney princess. She set her bowl on the mahogany table, unlocked the heavy front door, and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air carried the scent of pine and wet earth. "Nice catch, killer," Daniella called out, leaning against the wooden railing. Alexander spun around. The faint smile vanished. His jaw locked, and the rigid, bossy alpha persona slammed back into place. He marched across the wet grass, stopping at the base of the porch steps. "You are outside the perimeter," he growled. "I am on the porch. The roof is still over my head. Does the invisible death barrier start at the grass or the stairs?" "You mock my security measures." "I mock your entire vibe, Alexander. You act like a drill sergeant, but I just watched you run a wildlife rescue out of a thorn bush. Admit it, you like birds." He crossed his arms over his chest, the muscles bunching under his skin. "It was trapped. Its distress calls create noise. Noise attracts predators. I eliminated a tactical vulnerability." Daniella burst into laughter. The sound echoed through the quiet forest. "You eliminated a tactical vulnerability? By untangling a blue jay? You could have snapped its neck. You spent 5 minutes playing doctor. You gave it a pep talk." "I do not give pep talks." "You whispered to it. I saw you. What did you say? Fly away, little friend, before my beta tries to feed you neon cereal?" His golden eyes narrowed into slits. "You push limits you do not understand, human." "Daniella. My name is Daniella. Stop calling me human like I am an alien species. And stop trying to scare me. It stopped working the second you rescued a songbird." Alexander took a step up the stairs. He erased the distance between them, his towering frame casting a shadow over her. "You mistake control for weakness. That is a dangerous flaw. And you mistake cruelty for strength." She met his stare, refusing to step back toward the door. "You want me to think you are a monster, but monsters do not care about collateral damage." Chapter 10. Alexander stared down at her, a muscle ticking in his jaw. The scent of rain and crushed mint rolled off him, battling the sharp scent of the pine trees. "I am the alpha of this territory," he stated, his voice a low, vibrating rumble that resonated in her chest. "I govern predators. I execute threats. You witness the violence I am capable of bringing down on my enemies. Do not stand on my porch and tell me what I am." "I will stand wherever I want," Daniella countered, crossing her arms to mirror his stance. "And I will call it like I see it. You want to be the villain in this story so badly. You want me to cower in the corner and shake every time you enter a room. Fear guarantees obedience. Obedience keeps you breathing. Fear is exhausting. I do not have the energy for it. Daniella tilted her head, studying the harsh lines of his face. You put on this big, intimidating show. You bark orders. You threaten to erase my memory. You throw Leo out of the house for trying to be nice. Leo is a fool. He treats a hostage situation like a blind date. Leo understands hospitality. You understand brooding. But it is all an act, Alexander. The growling, the glaring. It is a shield. Alexander let out a harsh breath, stepping closer. The toes of his boots brushed against her bare feet. A shield against what? A 120-pound office designer in stolen sweatpants? Daniella ignored the insult to her height. A shield against the fact that you care too much. You carry the weight of your entire pack on your shoulders. You kill the rogues so your people do not have to. You isolate yourself in this massive glass fortress so they stay safe. You are a big softie. The words hung in the crisp morning air. Alexander froze. The golden rings in his eyes flared, burning bright against the morning light. Repeat that. You heard me. Daniella smiled, a sharp, teasing smirk. You are a big softie. You have a bleeding heart wrapped in a whole lot of anger issues. You are a giant, furry marshmallow. A low snarl ripped from his throat. The sound was not human. It carried the raw, unfiltered dominance of a beast pushed to its absolute limit. He reached out, his large hands gripping the wooden railing on either side of her, caging her in. You insult me, he hissed, leaning down until his nose almost brushed hers. I am diagnosing you. There is a difference. I tear men apart with my bare hands. I snap spines. I have painted that road with the blood of trespassers. He listed his atrocities, demanding she acknowledge the danger he posed. I am a killer, Daniella. You are a protector. She refused to let him win the argument. There is a massive difference. A killer enjoys the slaughter. You just do what needs to be done. You hate the violence. I saw it on your face last night when you shut your laptop. You looked exhausted, not victorious. Alexander tightened his grip on the wooden railing. The thick timber groaned under the pressure of his hands. You think you see me. You see nothing. You see a man holding back. You have never seen the beast. Then show me, Daniella challenged, her voice dropping to a breathless whisper. Stop talking about how terrifying you are and prove it, because right now, all I see is a guy who rescues birds and yells at his friends. His alpha ego snapped. Alexander released the railing, the wood splintering under his fingers. He stepped back, his chest heaving as he stared at her with pure, unadulterated frustration. He needed to shatter her infuriating confidence. He needed her to understand the lethal power she kept mocking. He turned his back to her and marched toward the edge of the driveway. Chapter 11. Daniella watched him walk away. His strides consumed the distance across the yard. He moved with a terrifying, predatory grace, the muscles in his back pulling taut beneath his scarred skin. He stopped at the edge of the paved driveway. A massive landscaping boulder sat nestled in the dirt, serving as a decorative barrier. The rock was the size of a small car, solid granite, gray and unyielding. Alexander did not hesitate. He did not wind up or prepare his stance. He simply pulled his right fist back and drove it directly into the center of the massive stone. The sound resembled a bomb detonating. A deafening crack echoed through the mountains, silencing every bird in the canopy. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, vibrating through the soles of Daniella's feet on the wooden porch. The boulder exploded. It did not split in two, it disintegrated. Chunks of jagged rock shot into the air, raining down on the driveway. A thick cloud of gray dust plumed upward, swallowing Alexander's form. Gravel pelted the side of his violet SUV. Silence slammed back into the forest. The dust settled, revealing Alexander standing amidst a pile of rubble. The massive boulder was gone, reduced to a crater of crushed stone and dust. He lowered his fist. His knuckles were completely unmarked. He did not bleed. He did not flinch. He turned his head, his glowing golden eyes locking onto Daniella across the yard. He waited for the scream. He waited for her to run inside and lock the door. He waited for the scent of genuine, undeniable terror to hit the air. Daniella stood motionless on the porch. She blinked twice. She looked at the pile of rocks, then back to the man. She let out a long sigh, walked down the wooden steps, and crossed the wet grass. She stopped a few feet away from the rubble. She crouched down, picking up a jagged piece of the destroyed stone. She turned the rock over in her hands, inspecting the sheer force required to pulverize it. She tossed the rock back into the pile and stood up, dusting off her hands. "Do you hate geology? Or did that specific rock owe you money?" Daniella asked. Alexander stared at her, absolute disbelief warring with the rage in his eyes. "I just shattered solid stone with a single strike." "I saw. Very impressive. Do you do party tricks too? Can you bend a spoon with your mind?" He crossed the distance between them in 2 massive strides. He crowded her, forcing her to tilt her head all the way back to maintain eye contact. "That rock was denser than bone, denser than steel. I can crush a human skull with 2 fingers. I will keep that in mind the next time I need a walnut cracked." Alexander grabbed her waist, hauling her flush against his hard chest. The move was sudden, jarring, and completely devoid of his usual restraint. "I am trying to teach you fear, Daniella. I am trying to keep you alive. If you do not respect my strength, you will get yourself killed the second an Iron Ridge scout breaches this property." "I respect your strength," she replied, her hands coming up to rest flat against his bare chest. She felt the frantic, heavy rhythm of his heart beneath his ribs. "I know exactly what you are capable of. I just know you will never use it on me." "You gamble with your life." "I trust my instincts." She smiled, a bold, reckless expression that drove him insane. "You smashed a rock to avoid admitting I was right. You are a softie, Alexander. A violent, destructive, terrifying softie." He leaned down, his face hovering a fraction of an inch from hers. "Want to test that?" "I have been testing it since I got in your car." Chapter 12. The air between them ignited. Alexander backed her up, his hands burning hot through the thin fabric of her borrowed t-shirt. He did not stop until Daniella's spine hit the trunk of a towering pine tree at the edge of the yard. The rough bark bit into her shoulders. He stepped into her space, caging her completely. He placed his hands on the tree trunk beside her head, trapping her. "You play a dangerous game," Alexander murmured. His voice lost the booming authority of the alpha, dropping into a husky, lethal rasp. "I like games," Daniella countered, though her breath hitched. The physical tension morphed. The anger vanished, replaced by a suffocating, heavy attraction. They stood miles away from civilization, surrounded by nothing but the forest and the remnants of the shattered boulder. Daniella looked at his mouth, then up to his burning golden eyes. "Are you going to growl at me again? Because we covered that routine yesterday." "I am out of patience, Daniella." "Good. Patience is boring." He dragged his gaze down her throat, tracking the frantic pulse jumping beneath her skin. He leaned closer, the scent of crushed mint wrapping around her senses, drowning out everything else. "You strip away my control. You defy every order. You stand in my territory and challenge my authority. My blood demands a resolution." "And what does that resolution look like?" She dared him, tilting her chin up, offering her throat. "Do you throw another temper tantrum? Do you smash another rock?" "No." He lowered his head, his lips hovering over the sensitive skin of her neck. He did not touch her, but the heat radiating from his mouth sent a cascade of shivers down her spine. "I claim the thing causing the chaos. I force you to acknowledge who holds the power." Daniella's hands curled into fists against his chest. She meant to push him away. Instead, her fingers tangled in the fabric of his sweatpants at his waist, anchoring him closer. "You do not hold the power here, Alexander. You shattered a boulder because I hurt your feelings." A low groan vibrated in his chest. He closed the remaining distance, pressing his forehead against hers. "You drive me to madness. I bring out your best qualities. You will be the death of my sanity." He shifted his hands, moving them from the tree trunk to her hips. His grip was entirely possessive, locking her against him. The sheer size difference between them became glaringly obvious. He could break her. He could crush her. But his thumbs traced soothing circles against the cotton of her sweatpants. "Are you going to kiss me, or are we just going to stand by a tree all morning?" Daniella whispered, her bravado finally cracking, revealing the raw, desperate want underneath. Alexander's eyes flared. He tilted her head back, his gaze fixed on her lips. The feral instinct roared in his mind, demanding he take what she offered. He wanted to consume her. He wanted to brand her as his own, removing any doubt about who she belonged to. He leaned in, the breath leaving Daniella's lungs in a rush. Then he stopped. He squeezed his eyes shut, his jaw clenching so hard it looked painful. He ripped himself away from her, stepping back so fast he kicked up dirt. He ran a hand through his dark hair, chest heaving as he fought the bloodlust and the desire tearing him apart. "I cannot," he choked out, his voice raw. Daniella stood against the tree, her lips parted, her skin burning from the sudden loss of his heat. "Why?" "Because you are human." He stared at her, the golden glow fading, leaving behind dark, tormented eyes. "And if I start, Daniella, I will not stop until there is nothing left of your old life. I go inside now. Do not follow me." He turned and walked back toward the fortress, leaving her standing in the yard, breathless, victorious, and completely ruined for any other man. Chapter 13. Alexander paced the living room floor. The hardwood creaked beneath his bare feet. He rubbed his hands over his face, attempting to scrub away the phantom sensation of Daniella's skin against his fingers. The scent of wild honeysuckle and sweet orange clung to the air, suffocating his senses. The back door clicked open. Leo stepped inside, carrying his black duffel bag. He dropped the bag onto the rug. "Perimeter is clear," Leo announced. "No fresh scents. The Iron Ridge scouts remain outside the border." Alexander stopped pacing. "Good. Secure the locks." Leo tilted his head, his nose twitching. "The air in here is thick. Did you yell at the human again?" "Alpha, we discussed the strategy. You cannot win a woman by barking orders." "She is a hostage, Leo, not a date." "She is wearing your clothes." "Hers are ruined." Leo sighed, walking into the kitchen to grab a ceramic bowl. "I saw her through the window. She stands by a tree looking victorious, and you pace the floor like a trapped animal. You botched the interaction. What did you say to her?" "I told her I could crush a human skull." Leo dropped the bowl. It clattered against the marble counter. "You threatened to crush her skull?" "I was making a point about safety." "You are a disaster." Leo marched back into the living room, grabbing a gray cashmere throw blanket from the back of the sofa. He shoved the fabric into Alexander's bare chest. "You need to fix this. Human women require soft words. Compliment her features. Tell her she shines like the moon. Tell her she reminds you of a delicate flower." "If I call Daniella a flower, she will stab me." "Try it. Women adore poetry." Leo pushed his alpha toward the front door. "Be charming. Smile. Do not show your teeth." The front door swung open before Alexander could argue. Daniella stepped inside. She still wore the oversized black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. Her bare feet left faint damp marks on the floorboards. She looked at the blanket in Alexander's hands, then up to his face. Alexander cleared his throat. He forced his facial muscles into what he assumed was a welcoming expression. "You are cold." "I am fine," Daniella replied, raising an eyebrow. "Take the blanket." He held it out, stiff as a board. "You need warmth. Your hair resembles the night sky, but with dirt in it. The mud highlights the shape of your face." Daniella stared at him. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Leo groaned from the kitchen and slapped a hand over his own face. "Did you just tell me I look like a dirty night sky?" Daniella asked. "I meant it as a positive observation." Daniella crossed her arms, a slow, wicked smile spreading across her lips. "Alexander, are you trying to flirt with me?" "I am attempting to provide hospitality." "You are malfunctioning. Did you short-circuit when you smashed that rock?" She stepped closer, ignoring the blanket. "Or did your beta give you a script? Because the mud highlights your face sounds like a Leo original." "I formulate my own dialogue," Alexander stated. "You are lying. Your eye is twitching." Daniella reached out and plucked the blanket from his grip. She tossed it onto the mahogany table next to the silver laptop. "Stop taking dating advice from a guy who brings neon cereal to a hostage situation." Alexander glared at Leo over Daniella's head. Leo offered a weak thumbs up and scrambled out the back door, leaving them alone again. "He means well," Alexander muttered, his broad shoulders slumping. "He is going to get you killed in the dating pool," Daniella teased. "If you ever try to recite poetry to me again, I will walk out the front door and let the rogues have me. It would be less painful." "I was trying to ease the tension." "You made it weirder. You are a terrifying, lethal alpha who rips apart monsters. Do not try to be a gentleman. It does not suit you." Alexander looked down at her. "What suits me, Daniella?" "Honesty," she fired back, her teasing tone vanishing. "Just say what you actually want to say. Skip the weird metaphors and the blankets." Chapter 14. Alexander held her gaze. The awkwardness of the failed compliment evaporated, leaving behind the raw, undeniable heat that had sparked out in the yard. He took a step forward, closing the distance she had just demanded he cross. "You want honesty," he stated, his voice dropping low. "Always. I want to claim you. I want to back you against that wall, rip those clothes off, and mark you so thoroughly that every wolf in this forest knows you belong to me." Daniella's breath hitched. Her pulse kicked into a frantic rhythm, pounding against her ribs. She refused to step back. "Then why did you walk away?" "Because you are fragile." "I am standing right here." Alexander shook his head. "You saw the Boulder, Daniella. You saw the violence. My instincts are not human. If I lose control, I will break you. I pulled away because I refuse to be the monster that hurts you." The confession hung in the quiet room. The bossy, arrogant alpha was gone, leaving behind a man terrified of his own strength. Daniella walked past him and sat on the leather sofa. She pulled her knees to her chest, resting her chin on them. She patted the empty cushion beside her. "Sit down, Alexander." He hesitated, then crossed the room and sat. The cushion dipped under his massive weight. The heat from his bare chest radiated against her side. "I design office spaces," Daniella began, staring at the unlit ceramic logs in the gas fireplace. "I pick out ergonomic chairs and argue with contractors about carpet swatches. My life is safe. My life is predictable. And I hate it." Alexander watched her profile, listening to the shift in her tone. "When my car got stuck in the mud, I was furious. But when I saw you out there, fighting those beasts..." She turned her head to meet his golden eyes. "I wasn't just scared. I was awake. For the first time in years, I felt completely awake." "You glorify the violence." "I recognize the reality of it. You keep calling me fragile, but you don't know me. I do not break easily." She reached out, her small hand resting flat against his scarred ribs. Her touch sent a jolt of electricity straight to his core. "I know what you are capable of. I accept the danger. Stop trying to protect me from yourself." Alexander covered her hand with his own. His fingers dwarfed hers. "My bloodlust is unpredictable. When the feral instinct takes over, rational thought disappears." "Then we will figure it out," she countered. "I am not asking you to be gentle. I am asking you to stop treating me like glass." He let out a ragged breath, leaning his head back against the sofa. The scent of her wild honeysuckle drove the wolf in his mind insane, demanding he take what she offered. You are fearless. I am terrified, she corrected, a soft smile touching her lips. I just refuse to let the fear win. You can crush rocks and kill rogues, but you are terrible at compliments, and you rescue birds. I can handle the beast, Alexander, because I know the man underneath. You push every boundary. I plan to shatter them, just like your decorative landscaping. A genuine low chuckle rumbled in his chest. The sound surprised them both. The heavy, oppressive tension in the fortress lifted, replaced by a deep, grounded connection. Chapter 15. The rain returned in the late afternoon. Sheets of water lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the view of the pine trees and the shattered boulder. The confinement turned the safe house into a pressure cooker. Daniella paced the length of the living room. She read the spines of the books on the shelves. She inspected the smudge of mud she had left on the mahogany table the night before. She avoided the kitchen because Alexander was in the kitchen. They had spent the last 4 hours dancing around each other. The raw conversation on the sofa had stripped away the sarcasm and the hostility, leaving nothing but burning, unspoken desire. Every time they ended up in the same room, the air grew too thick to breathe. Daniella gave up on pacing. Her throat felt dry. She marched into the kitchen, keeping her eyes fixed on the cabinets. Alexander stood by the island, reviewing a digital map on the metallic laptop. He wore a fresh, dark gray Henley, the sleeves pushed up to his elbows, and his black jeans. He did not look up when she entered, but she saw the muscles in his jaw tighten. He tracked her every movement through scent alone. Daniella opened the cabinet and reached for a stainless steel cup. Alexander reached for the same cup at the exact same moment. His large, calloused hand clamped over hers. The contact sent a visible shockwave through them both. Daniella gasped, dropping her hold on the metal cup. Alexander did not pull his hand away. Instead, he turned his hand over, tangling his fingers with hers. He shut the silver laptop with his free hand. I need water, Daniella whispered, her voice betraying the tremor in her chest. You need to stop pacing, he replied, his voice a gravelly rasp. The sound of your bare feet on the floorboards is driving me insane. It is a free country. I can walk where I want. He stepped around the marble island, pulling her hand toward him until she stood flush against his chest. The heat radiating off him matched the sudden spike in her own temperature. You are doing this on purpose, he accused. You walk past me. You let your scent linger in the air. You are testing my restraint. I am existing in the same house as you. If my existence is a test, you are failing. Alexander backed her up until her spine hit the refrigerator. He planted his hands on the cool metal on either side of her head. He caged her in, just like he had outside by the pine tree. But this time, there was no hostility to hide behind. I warned you, he murmured, his face inches from hers. I told you what would happen if the boundaries fell. The boundaries fell hours ago, Daniella challenged, looking up into his burning golden eyes. We are just waiting to see who breaks first. He leaned closer, the crushed mint scent enveloping her. I do not break, Daniella. I conquer. Then stop talking and do it. Chapter 16. The bickering died. The teasing stopped. Alexander let out a guttural groan, a sound ripped straight from the feral beast he kept locked away. He did not ask for permission. He crashed his mouth down onto hers. The kiss carried zero gentleness. It held pure, unfiltered possession. He consumed her, his lips hard and demanding against hers. The force of it stole the breath from her lungs, but Daniella did not shrink back. She met his passion with her own, her hands flying up to grip the thick fabric of his gray Henley. She pulled him closer, erasing whatever fraction of space remained between them. He shifted his grip, his large hands grabbing her waist. He lifted her off the floor with zero effort, setting her onto the edge of the marble counter. Daniella wrapped her legs around his hips, anchoring him to her. Her fingers tangled in his dark hair, pulling him deeper into the kiss. The taste of him was intoxicating, sharp, wild, and entirely consuming. Alexander broke the kiss, trailing his mouth down her jaw and pressing open-mouthed kisses against the sensitive skin of her throat. His teeth grazed her pulse point. Daniella let out a soft gasp, her head falling back. The sound drove him further over the edge. "Mine," he growled against her skin, the word vibrating through her entire body. "Bossy," she breathed out, her hands tracing the broad line of his shoulders. He pulled back, his chest heaving as he looked down at her. His eyes glowed a brilliant, unnatural gold, the feral wolf sitting right beneath the surface. He studied her flushed face, her swollen lips, and the complete lack of fear in her eyes. "You are not fragile," he admitted, his voice rough. "I told you," she replied, her hands resting flat against his chest. "I can handle you." Alexander slid his hands under the hem of her oversized black t-shirt, his calloused palms resting against her bare skin. The heat of his touch made her shiver. He mapped the curve of her waist, claiming every inch of the territory he touched. "I will not let you go back," he warned, his gaze locking onto hers. "Once this line is crossed, there is no return to your old life. You stay here. You stay with me." Daniella looked at the terrifying alpha standing between her knees. She thought about the office spaces, the boring routines, and the empty apartment waiting for her in the city. Then, she looked at the man who commanded beasts and rescued birds. "I am not going anywhere," she promised. He did not need another word. He captured her lips again, entirely done with restraint. The storm raged outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, but the true chaos broke loose inside the safe house, sealing a bond neither of them could ever undo. Chapter 17. Alexander's mouth moved against hers. The kiss carried a desperate, overwhelming heat. Daniella tangled her fingers in his dark hair. She pulled him closer to her. She wanted to erase the space between them completely. The storm outside battered the glass windows, but the sound of the heavy rain faded into the background, drowned out by her racing pulse. Suddenly, Alexander stopped. He ripped his mouth away from hers. His body went rigid against her. The muscles in his broad back turned to stone under her hands. He turned his head toward the front of the fortress, staring at the solid wall. "Alexander?" Daniella asked. She kept her hands on his shoulders, confused by the sudden halt. "What is it?" "Quiet," he ordered. The raw desire vanished from his tone. A cold, flat edge replaced the passion. Daniella slid off the marble counter. Her bare feet hit the floorboards with a soft thud. She did not argue or tease him. She recognized the total shift in his posture. The alpha protector had returned, and the man she was just kissing was locked away. He stepped away from her. He marched out of the kitchen and into the open living room. Daniella followed right behind him. The oversized black t-shirt hung loose over her frame. She crossed her arms over her chest to ward off the sudden, freezing chill in the room. Alexander reached the security wall panel near the heavy front door. He punched a code into the keypad. The small screen illuminated his face in a pale light. He tapped a few buttons. The screen flipped through different camera feeds, showing the dark exterior of the property. "The perimeter sensors tripped," he stated. His glowing golden eyes locked onto the small screen. "Is it Leo?" Daniella asked. She stood a few feet behind him, looking over his arm. "Leo knows the blind spots. He bypasses the sensors on purpose to save time. He considers it a game." Alexander hit another button, switching to a thermal view. "These are uncoordinated movements, multiple targets. They spread out across the eastern border in a hunting formation." "The Iron Ridge Rogues," she said. It was an established fact, not a question. "They found us." He turned away from the panel. He strode over to the mahogany table in the center of the room. He flipped open the metallic laptop. His fingers flew across the keys. A detailed map of the property appeared on the screen. Red dots blinked at the edge of the forest line. Daniella walked over to the table. She looked at the bright screen. She counted the blinking red dots spreading across the digital map. 1, 2, 3. "Alexander, there are at least 20 dots on that screen." 22, he corrected. He shut the aluminum laptop. The glow vanished from his face, leaving him in the shadows. "They brought a full hunting party. They intend to swarm the property from all sides. Why so many? Because they know I am here. They know 3 of their best scouts died on the asphalt road last night. He looked down at her, his expression hard. And they want the human who saw it happen. They eliminate witnesses. Daniella forced her spine straight. She refused to tremble in front of him. She looked up into his face. What is the plan? The plan is survival, he said. This fortress has reinforced walls. The glass is bulletproof. But 22 beasts will test the structural integrity eventually. I will not wait for them to breach the doors. You are going outside, she realized. I must secure the grounds. I must eliminate the threat before they surround the building. He pointed a finger at her. You will go to the guest room. You will lock the oak door. You will not come out for any reason. I am not going to sit in a room and wait to be eaten, she argued, her stubborn streak flaring. You have no combat training. You are a civilian. He crossed the distance between them in one stride. He grabbed her shoulders. His grip was firm but careful. If you step outside, they will tear you to pieces in seconds. I cannot protect you and fight 20 wolves at the same time. You become a massive liability to my focus. I understand, she said, nodding her head. I stay inside. You go outside. Good. He released her shoulders. We move now. Every second counts. Chapter 18. Daniella followed Alexander back into the kitchen. He did not look behind him. He scanned the room for a tactical advantage. Guest room, he ordered, pointing down the dark hallway. Now. Wait, Daniella said. She walked past him to the counters. She opened the drawer next to the oven. Utensils gleamed inside the dark space. She ignored the forks and spoons. She grabbed a massive stainless steel chef's knife. The bare metal blade measured 10 inches long. Alexander stared at the knife in her hand. Put that back. No. She gripped the black handle. I agree to hide. I agree to stay out of your way. But I refuse to hide empty-handed. If one of those giant monsters breaks through the oak door, I want a fighting chance. A kitchen knife will not pierce their thick hide. It will poke them in the eye. That buys me 5 seconds to run. Daniella. Alexander. She met his stare, refusing to yield. She held the knife down by her side. Do not argue with me right now. You have 22 monsters outside waiting to attack. Go! He let out a harsh breath. He did not have time to debate weapon choices with a stubborn office designer. Fine. Keep the knife. Follow me. They walked down the dark hallway. The floorboards creaked under his heavy steps. Daniella made no sound on her bare feet. They reached the end of the hall. Alexander stopped at the threshold of the guest room. He looked inside the space. The massive bed sat empty. The heavy duvet lay tangled on the floor where she had left it earlier. Go inside, he said. Daniella stepped into the room. She turned around to face him. He filled the doorway. His broad shoulders blocked the view of the hallway completely. Lock the door, he instructed. Do not open it. Do not look out the window. If you hear glass shatter in the living room, stay in the far corner of this room. I understand, she said. He reached out. He placed a hand on the side of her face. His thumb brushed over her cheekbone. The gesture was brief. The gesture held intense, unspoken emotion. I must go to the Midnight Violet SUV in the driveway to retrieve my weapon, he explained. I will return for you. You better, she replied, gripping the handle of the knife tighter. You still owe me dinner. A faint smile touched his lips. He pulled his hand away. He stepped back into the hallway. He grabbed the brass handle and pulled the heavy oak door shut. The latch clicked into place. Daniella turned the deadbolt. The metal lock slid home with a solid sound. She stood in the dark. The room felt like a tomb. The only sound came from the rain hitting the window panes. She walked backward until her spine hit the far wall. She slid down the drywall and sat on the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. She laid the stainless steel knife on her lap. Silence stretched out. She stared at the door. She counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. 10 minutes passed. Nothing happened. The waiting felt worse than the fear. Her imagination conjured terrifying images of giant beasts tearing through the fortress. The silence in the house drove her insane. She stood up. She needed to know what was happening. She needed actual information, not just the pictures in her head. She walked to the door. She grabbed the deadbolt. She turned it slowly. The lock clicked open. She turned the brass handle and pulled the door open a fraction of an inch to look outside. Chapter 19. Daniella peered through the crack in the door. The long hallway stretched into the living room. The gas fireplace remained unlit. The ceramic logs sat cold in the dark. Shadows swallowed the leather sofa and the mahogany table. She held her breath. She watched the floor-to-ceiling windows at the back of the living room. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the towering pine trees and the rain pouring down the glass. The windows exploded. The violent shatter ripped through the silent fortress. Shards of thick, bulletproof glass rained across the hardwood floors like deadly hail. The storm outside roared into the living room, bringing freezing wind and water inside the house. Daniella gripped the doorframe. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, then forced them open. A massive shape leaped through the broken window frame. The beast landed on the pristine rug. It was a wolf, but the size defied logic. The creature stood as tall as a horse. Coarse, matted brown fur covered its muscular body. Saliva dripped from its jaws onto the floorboards. A second beast followed the first, then a third. 3 Iron Ridge rogues stood inside the safe house. Their claws gouged deep tracks into the wood. They snapped their jaws. Their heads turned toward the dark hallway. They pinpointed her location instantly. Daniella tightened her grip on the stainless steel knife. She prepared to slam the oak door shut and brace her body against it. Before she could move, a fourth shape entered the ruined room. Alexander stepped through the shattered window. He held the thick wooden staff in his hands. The wicked silver tips caught the faint light from the hallway. Mud and rain soaked his dark gray Henley. He did not look like the man from the kitchen. He looked like an executioner. The 3 rogues spun around to face him. They bared their teeth. A collective snarl shook the walls of the living room. Alexander did not speak. He did not issue a warning. He spun the wooden staff with blinding speed. He gripped the bare wood, keeping his hands safe from the toxic metal. He slammed the silver point into the skull of the first rogue. The beast dropped to the floor without a single sound. The second rogue lunged. Alexander pivoted on his heel. He swept the staff low, hitting the creature's front legs with a solid crack. The wolf collapsed. Alexander drove the staff down, ending the fight in a single motion. The third rogue ignored Alexander. The beast saw an opening. It darted past the alpha and sprinted toward the dark hallway. It charged straight for the crack in the guest room door. Alexander saw the movement. He saw the beast heading for Daniella's room. Something inside him broke. The human restraint vanished entirely. The tactical alpha disappeared. The feral beast tore free from its mental cage. Alexander let out a roar. The sound vibrated with pure, unfiltered bloodlust. It was a sound that promised absolute destruction. His golden eyes ignited, glowing like twin suns in the dark room. The muscles in his back and shoulders expanded, tearing the seams of his gray Henley. He dropped the wooden staff. It clattered against the floorboards. He did not need a weapon anymore. He became the weapon. He launched himself across the room. His speed defied human comprehension. He tackled the third rogue before it reached the hallway entrance. His sheer mass crushed the beast against the wall. The drywall caved in from the brutal impact. Daniella watched through the crack. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She witnessed the true feral shift. She witnessed the terrifying power he kept hidden. Chapter 20. The living room turned into a chaotic battlefield. The 3 initial intruders were dead, but the pack outside heard the commotion. More beasts poured through the shattered floor-to-ceiling windows to join the fight. Daniella watched from her hiding spot. She refused to shut the door. She could not look away from the violence. Alexander stood in the center of the wreckage. He was a one-man army. He fought bare-handed, relying on his overwhelming alpha strength. A gray wolf lunged for his back. Alexander spun, caught the beast by the jaw, and hurled it across the room. The wolf smashed into the leather sofa, flipping the heavy furniture over onto its back. Two more rogues attacked at the same time. Alexander met their charge head-on. He drove his fist into the ribs of the first attacker. The sound of snapping bone cracked like a gunshot over the howling wind. He grabbed the second beast by the scruff of its neck and threw it back out the broken window. The feral bloodlust fueled his every move. He did not tire. He did not slow down. He moved with a brutal, terrifying grace. He was an unstoppable force tearing through the enemy ranks. A wolf tried to bite his leg. He kicked it aside. Another tried to flank him. He anticipated the move and crushed it. Wolves swarmed through the opening. 10, 15, 20. Daniella lost count of the monsters. The sheer number of attackers should have overwhelmed him, but Alexander met them all. He broke spines, he crushed skulls, he threw massive bodies across the room like they weighed nothing. The living room walls cracked under the constant impacts. Blood sprayed across the unlit gas fireplace. Ceramic logs shattered as a rogue crashed into the stone hearth. Books tumbled from the shelves. Glass crunched under his heavy boots. Daniella gripped the stainless steel knife tight. She felt no fear for herself. She only felt awe. The man she teased in the kitchen possessed the power of a god of war. He delivered absolute violence. He kept his promise. He let nothing reach the hallway. The fight lasted 10 brutal minutes. Finally, the flow of beasts stopped. The last two rogues whimpered and scrambled backward. The beast took one look at the alpha standing amidst the carnage and bolted back out into the rain. Silence crashed back into the safe house. The only sound was the storm outside and the heavy, ragged breathing of the victor. Alexander stood in the center of the ruined living room. The bodies of 20 giant wolves littered the floor. The mahogany table was gone, smashed to pieces. The leather sofa was destroyed. The pristine rug was a swamp of mud. Alexander's gray Henley hung in tatters. Scratches covered his arms and chest, but his feral durability prevented any severe wounds. He stood tall. His chest heaved. His golden eyes burned through the dark. He looked like a monster. He looked like a nightmare. Daniella pushed the oak door open. She stepped out of the guest room. She walked down the dark hallway. She ignored the carnage on the floor. She ignored the broken glass and the rain. She walked straight toward the terrifying alpha. She did not scream. She did not run away. She stopped 2 feet in front of him. Alexander stared down at her. The feral rage still vibrated in his veins. He waited for her to recoil in horror. Daniella looked at the destroyed living room. She looked at his torn clothes. "Well," she said, her voice cut clear through the silence, "you definitely owe me a pizza now, and maybe a new living room." Chapter 21. Rain poured through the ruined floor-to-ceiling windows. Freezing wind battered the destroyed living room. Alexander stood frozen amidst the carnage. His golden eyes locked onto the human woman standing 2 feet away. She held a 10-inch stainless steel chef's knife. She did not tremble. She demanded pizza. The feral beast inside his mind roared. It expected prey. It expected a terrified victim cowering in the corner. Instead, it faced Daniella. Alexander forced his chest to stop heaving. He willed the golden fire in his eyes to fade. The shift from feral bloodlust back to rational alpha required massive physical effort. The torn remnants of his dark gray Henley hung from his broad shoulders. Rainwater mixed with the blood from the superficial scratches crossing his chest. "You are not screaming," Alexander stated. His voice cracked. The sound resembled stones grinding together. "I reserve screaming for roller coasters and bad haircuts," Daniella replied. She lowered the stainless steel knife. She pointed the bare blade at the flipped leather sofa. "You destroyed the furniture. You pulverized the mahogany table, and I am pretty sure you broke the ceramic logs in the gas fireplace. Do you have a broom, or do you expect me to sweep this up?" She is insane, Alexander thought. A beautiful, absolute lunatic. He stepped toward her. His heavy boots crunched over the broken glass. He stopped inches from her face. He needed to find the lie. He needed to smell the hidden terror beneath the wild honeysuckle and sweet orange scent. He flared his nostrils, inhaling the air surrounding her. He caught the sharp tang of adrenaline. He caught the salt of the rain. But the bitter, suffocating stench of fear did not exist. She told the truth. She stood in a slaughterhouse and felt zero fear. "I killed 20 rogues," Alexander rumbled, leaning down. "I crushed bone. I snapped spines. Look at the floor, Daniella. Look at the monsters I tore apart to keep you breathing." Daniella kept her gaze pinned to his face. "I see them. They made a mess. You made a bigger mess. Now, are you going to stand here and flex your muscles all night? Or are we going to find a room with intact windows? I am freezing." A sharp laugh ripped from Alexander's throat. The sound echoed over the howling storm. The last traces of the feral beast retreated, replaced by pure awe. He reached out and wrapped his massive hand around the handle of her knife. He pulled the weapon from her grip and tossed it onto the flooded floorboards. The kitchen door swung open. Leo stumbled into the safe house. The blonde beta dripped with rainwater. He dragged his black duffel bag behind him. He stopped dead in the entryway. His eyes widened to the size of dinner plates as he surveyed the destroyed living room. "Alpha," Leo gasped, dropping the bag. "I heard the glass shatter. I fought the 2 fleeing stragglers by the eastern perimeter and ran straight back. What happened to the rug?" Daniella turned her head. "He threw a tantrum. Also, the Iron Ridge pack sent 22 guys to kill us." Leo stared at the bodies scattered across the floorboards. He looked at Alexander's shredded shirt. Then he looked at the human woman standing in the center of the room, looking bored. "You let her see the feral state?" Leo whispered, genuine shock coloring his tone. "Alpha, the literature says humans go into cardiac arrest when they see a feral shift. Why is she asking for pizza?" "Because she is broken," Alexander muttered, a wicked smirk touching the corner of his mouth. "Secure the perimeter, Leo. Drag these carcasses into the woods. Call the cleanup crew. Tell them we need a new floor, a new window, and a new table." "I need a mop," Leo said, staring at the flooded room. "A very big mop, and maybe some bleach." Alexander ignored his beta. He looked back down at Daniella. The rain continued to blow through the ruined wall, soaking her oversized black t-shirt. The cold made her shiver. "Come," Alexander commanded. He wrapped his arm around her waist. "We are moving to the West Wing. The glass remains intact there." "Do they have snacks in the West Wing?" she asked, leaning into his solid heat. "I will feed you. I will warm you. And then we are going to have a long conversation about your lack of self-preservation." "I preserved myself fine," she argued, letting him guide her away from the carnage. "I found a knife. I had a tactical plan." "Your plan involved poking a giant wolf in the eye with a kitchen utensil." "It was a solid plan." Chapter 22. Alexander guided her down a long corridor away from the destruction. The noise of the storm faded behind thick, soundproof walls. They entered the master bathroom in the West Wing. The space mirrored the exorbitant luxury of the rest of the house. White marble covered the floors and the walls. A massive soaking tub sat in the center of the room. Alexander dropped the torn remnants of his dark gray Henley onto the white marble floor. He turned on the brass faucet. Hot water rushed over his calloused hands, washing away the dirt and dried blood. Daniella sat on the edge of the closed toilet seat. She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around her legs. The oversized black t-shirt clung to her damp skin. "You are bleeding," Daniella pointed out. Alexander looked down at his chest. Deep, red scratches crisscrossed his pectoral muscles and his ribs. The injuries looked brutal to a human eye. To him, they registered as minor annoyances. His feral durability ensured the rogues caused no structural damage. "They will close by morning," he stated, splashing hot water over his torso. "They look terrible. Sit down." Daniella stood up. She walked over to the sprawling marble vanity. She opened 3 drawers before finding a white plastic first aid kit. She pulled it out and set it on the counter. "I do not need bandages," Alexander grumbled. "I do not care what you need. Sit on the edge of the tub." She popped the plastic latches open. She pulled out cotton pads, antiseptic, and white gauze. Alexander let out a rough sigh. He surrendered to her bossy tone. He sat on the edge of the massive tub. He spread his knees, making room for her to step between them. Daniella stepped into his space. She unscrewed the cap of the antiseptic. The sharp, medicinal scent cut through the smell of rain and crushed mint. She saturated a cotton pad and pressed it against the longest scratch on his collarbone. Alexander did not flinch. He watched her face. He studied the intense focus in her eyes. Her hands remained steady. She wiped the blood away with clinical precision. "You make a terrible hostage," he murmured. "You make a terrible kidnapper," she shot back, grabbing a fresh cotton pad. "Kidnappers are supposed to keep their captives in a basement. You gave me a luxury suite and fought a war to keep me safe. I give your villain aesthetic a 0 out of 10. I am a lethal predator. I crushed a solid granite boulder this morning. You are a golden retriever with anger issues." She dragged the antiseptic pad across his scarred ribs. "You rescued a blue jay. You cannot terrorize me anymore. I know your secret." The physical proximity ignited the dormant heat between them. Daniella stood mere inches away. Her thighs brushed against the inside of his knees. The damp cotton of her t-shirt revealed the frantic, heavy rhythm of her heartbeat. Alexander reached up. He wrapped his large hand around her wrist, stopping her movements. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice dropping an octave. Daniella met his golden eyes. The teasing faded from her expression. The undeniable, heavy tension returned, thick and suffocating. "You stood in a room covered in blood," Alexander said. "You watched me tear life away from 20 beasts. You saw the monster inside me. Why did you not run when I dropped the staff?" "I saw the monster," Daniella agreed, her voice a breathless whisper. "But the monster stood between me and the danger. The monster made sure nothing reached the hallway. I did not run because I knew you would never let them touch me." He stared at her, stunned by her absolute trust. She accepted the violence. She matched his dominant nature with her own fierce independence. She refused to cower. "You are my perfect match," he growled, pulling her wrist closer to his chest. "I am just a human with a baking magazine subscription." "You are a menace, and you belong to me." Chapter 23. Alexander stood up, forcing Daniella to take a step back. The raw intensity in his eyes burned away any lingering chill in the room. He abandoned the first aid kit on the marble vanity. The bleeding had already stopped. His alpha healing sealed the superficial wounds. He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. He led her out of the bathroom and into the master bedroom. The room featured a massive king-sized bed covered in dark slate bedding. The storm raged outside the reinforced windows, but the interior felt impenetrable. A heavy silence settled over the space, thick with anticipation. Alexander released her hand. He paced the length of the bedroom floor. He moved with the restless energy of a caged animal. "The threat is neutralized," Alexander began, his back turned to her. "Leo will clear the bodies. The Iron Ridge Pack lost their best fighters. They will not launch another attack on this territory for a decade. The border is secure." Daniella stood near the edge of the bed. She crossed her arms, watching his broad shoulders tense. "So, the kidnapping is over. I can go back to my cobalt blue sedan and wait for a tow truck." Alexander stopped pacing. He spun around to face her. The golden rings in his eyes flared bright. "No!" The word hit the air like a physical strike. It carried absolute authority. It held zero room for debate. Daniella tilted her head. She refused to back down. "No? What happened to erasing my memory and dropping me in the city? What happened to the whole, 'you are a massive liability' speech?" He crossed the room. He closed the distance between them, stopping when his chest almost brushed hers. The heat radiating off his skin wrapped around her like a blanket. "I lied," he confessed, his voice a low, vibrating rumble. "I lied to myself. I lied to Leo. I brought you here to protect the pack's secret, but the second I put you in that midnight violet SUV, I knew I could never let you leave. You act like you own the forest, Alexander. I govern the forest, but you command my absolute focus. He reached out, his hands gripping her waist. He pulled her flush against his hard body. I warned you about this morning. I told you that once the line is crossed, there is no return to your old life. The line is gone, Daniella. I shattered it. Daniella's pulse skyrocketed. The fear she felt earlier during the attack paled in comparison to the overwhelming, intoxicating rush of his confession. My life is in the city. I design office spaces. Quit. I have an apartment. Break the lease. He leaned down, his face hovering a fraction of an inch from hers. You hate your predictable life. You told me the truth on the sofa. You feel awake here. You thrive in the chaos. You belong in this fortress. You are very bossy. I am the alpha. It is a job requirement. And if I say no? She challenged, a wicked smile pulling at her lips. If I tell you I want to go back to my boring apartment and eat frozen dinners? Alexander let out a ragged groan. He rested his forehead against hers. His thumbs traced soothing circles against her hips. If you tell me to let you go, I will put you in the SUV. I will drive you to the city. I will walk you to your door, and then I will sit on your front porch and tear apart any man who looks at you until you invite me back inside. That sounds like a terrible neighborhood watch program. I am a terrible man, Daniella, but I am yours. I surrender my absolute control to you. The admission stripped away the last of his tough guy armor. The alpha of the pack, the terrifying protector, offered her the one thing he refused to give anyone else. He offered her his submission. Okay, Daniella whispered, her hands sliding up his chest to wrap around his neck. I accept. Chapter 24. Alexander's control snapped. He did not waste another second on words. He captured her lips in a fierce, demanding kiss. The gentleness vanished, replaced by a desperate, consuming hunger. He kissed her like a man starved. Daniella met his passion with explosive energy. She tangled her fingers in his dark hair, pulling him closer. She tasted the rain and the crushed mint on his skin. The sheer power of his dominant nature crashed over her, but it did not drown her. It elevated her. He wrapped his massive arms around her waist and lifted her off the floor. Daniella wrapped her legs around his hips. She anchored herself to his solid frame. Alexander carried her to the massive king-sized bed. He followed her down onto the dark slate bedding, his heavy weight pressing her into the mattress. Mine, he growled against the sensitive skin of her throat. His teeth grazed her pulse point, sending a jolt of electricity straight to her core. Always, she breathed out, her hands tracing the jagged scars across his back. He pulled the oversized black t-shirt over her head, tossing it onto the floorboards. The cool air hit her skin for a fraction of a second before his burning heat replaced it. He mapped the curves of her body with calloused hands. He branded her with his touch, ensuring she understood the permanence of his claim. Every kiss held a promise of absolute protection. Every touch solidified the bond forming between them. The human woman and the feral beast locked together in a storm of undeniable passion. The physical tension they built over the last 2 days exploded. Alexander pushed her to the edge of sanity and pulled her back, matching her fierce independence with his overwhelming strength. They fought for control, a beautiful, chaotic war that ended in total surrender from them both. Hours later, the storm outside finally broke. Morning sunlight pierced through the reinforced windows of the master bedroom. The golden light spilled across the slate bedding. Daniella lay curled against Alexander's side. Her head rested on his scarred chest. She listened to the steady, calm rhythm of his heartbeat. The terrifying alpha slept soundly, his arm wrapped tight around her waist. His grip remained possessive even in sleep. She traced a finger over the long scratch on his collarbone. The wound looked much better. His feral durability worked fast. Alexander let out a low rumble. His golden eyes fluttered open. He looked down at the human woman resting against his chest. A genuine, relaxed smile spread across his face. You are staring, Daniella murmured, not bothering to lift her head. I am guarding my territory. He tightened his hold on her waist. Leo will arrive soon with the cleanup crew. We need to supervise the reconstruction of the living room. I am not supervising anything today, Daniella stated. She closed her eyes and snuggled deeper into the warm bedding. I survived a kidnapping. I survived a rogue attack. I am taking a vacation day. The pack requires leadership. The pack can wait. Tell Leo to figure it out. If he brings neon cereal to the cleanup, fire him. Alexander let out a deep, rumbling laugh. The sound vibrated against her cheek. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the scent of wild honeysuckle and sweet orange. As you wish, Daniella, he murmured. The big, bad wolf was officially tamed. He remained a lethal protector to the rest of the world, but in the quiet safety of the fortress, he belonged entirely to the fearless office designer who refused to run away. The end. Quick favor, do not go anywhere yet. If you thought Daniella was brave for looking a lethal alpha in the eye and calling him a big softie, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. You have to hear this beautiful disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is completely unhinged.